Let's go.
Welcome to the Trusted Leader Show. I'm your host, David Horsager. Join me as I sit down with influential leaders from around the world to discuss why leaders and organizations fail, top tactics for high performance, and how you can become an even more trusted leader. Welcome to the Trusted Leader Show. It's David Horsager. I've got a friend. He is all the way over in Amsterdam today. Welcome, Ty Jernstedt.
Hello, David. Good to see you again.
Yeah, thanks for being here. So, Ty has served as Global Director of Diversity and Inclusion for Nike. He has been a consultant. He's owned his own organization. Some of his brands go from everything from the people he's worked with, from Nike to McDonald's to Coca-Cola and Disney. He is born in the USA, Duke grad, right?
That's right. Go Blue Devils.
Yeah, go Blue Devils.
And then thankfully basketball season starting pretty soon. Football's been a little bit of a challenge this year for us, but thank God for basketball.
Yeah, you'll be watching from there.
Yes, obviously, always when I can.
And then MBA in Japan. I mean, this is kind of fun. English, Japanese, French, Dutch. You can speak all kinds of languages. He's been a Trust Edge certified coach, but he is just, when I met Ty the first time, I could just see this gentleman that cares about change, cares about people, all people, cares about experience and the experience in organizations, and the employees so they can serve others well. So I think just super, super grateful to have you here, Ty.
No, thanks for having me.
Give me your take on it. That was a quick little background, but let's just give us a little take on your journey, and then I'm so excited to dive in.
Yeah, so my journey professionally has gone kind of all over the place, crisscross, boomerang back into new areas. So first worked for about 10 years in international marketing and communications, in PR, promotions marketing, retail brand marketing, and so forth. And then realized when I was up to my eyeballs with dealing with Hello Kitty and the Disney properties and McDonald Land characters, making Happy Meal toys for the Asian markets when I was working in Hong Kong, realized this was great work. I'm bringing joy to kids and probably doing some other things to them as well. Maybe time to find a new career path that was more in line with my purpose and my values. And as I got into that work and moved back to the US, I got into coaching. So I became a certified coach, doing a lot of work in life coaching because I wanted to step away from the corporate world for a bit, and then moved into more leadership coaching, then got into leadership development. And that's where I joined Nike, our European headquarters here outside of Amsterdam. From that role, moved into the global role for D&I and did that for about 6 years. And then had the opportunity to move to Berlin to work for a company called Zalando. That's Europe's largest online fashion platform. And with them, worked in areas of culture and engagement. I kickstarted their D&I strategy work, which, because it hadn't started quite yet, led groups around leadership development and people development. And then went back to Amsterdam about 3.5 years ago, to work in the similar areas of how do I, unlock the potential of organizations with their talent and their culture and their employee experience through coaching, advising, designing, and facilitating.
I love taking thinking about how we take the complex and make it simple. And, you've got such a cultural background from, Japan. Even we're going to talk about later some of the work you've done in South Africa. What would you say to just someone who isn't overly competent culturally? Are there some tips like they could take away? Like, how do I step into that new culture? I've got to go, I'm going to live somewhere else, or I'm just going to go be somewhere else for a week. Sadly, in a time I was in Japan, I did 54 events in 27 days. I remember that. But what I remember was we were with another American group, and one of the saddest things I saw, I didn't even want to be aligned with them because of how just really, I don't think it was intentional, but unbelievably careless they were with the culture that we were invited to be a part of. What do you think?
Yeah, so some of the main things I've learned through studying and just having to be thrown into it myself is, one, just be open and curious and keep remembering that the way you had your worldview, coming from the US as being American, is not the same other places. They value things differently. They approach things differently. They communicate things differently. And it's very easy to say, well, we've got the American way. We're number one. Everyone else is secondary. So then realize, well, actually, no, other countries and their cultures have many other aspects that are way better, from my perspective, way better than what we have in the US. So if you can be open, be mindful, be respectful, be curious, get into it. Don't stay in those little expat ghettos, as we call them, in other places where you just stick to your kind. If you want to hang out with Americans, I could have done that back in the US. I don't want to be living in these other countries and just have Americans. I want to have people from the home country. I've lived other places because it just gives those dynamics and the freshness of different perspectives and different ways of doing things and living life.
What do you've talked a lot through the years, and a lot of your work has been really, you could say, whether it's coaching, D&I work, ID&E, whether it's some of the employee engagement work you've done in the past, some of the leadership development, certainly, it's been about change, trying to help people change. How do you help unlock that challenge of talent? How do you help start helping others change?
Yeah, so I think what I've learned from my various roles and different companies and so forth is really, there's not really one approach or one path you can take. So from my work in talent development and leadership development, there are definitely things that need to happen that way of enabling people, building up the skills, shifting those behaviors to help them become more confident and competent to be that leader that's going to coach their people and inspire them, drive their business or drive what they're doing within the organization. But if you just came from that perspective, I think it will create some change, but also if you don't shift the culture as well, it's going to be hard to really create that unlock for the people, across the organization, across the functions, across the leadership levels. So maybe one example with a company I used to work with, we knew that leaders and employees weren't giving much feedback to each other. So they said, well, hey, let's just do some trainings, workshops all over the place to kind of upskill our people to be able to give feedback more and receive it. And I said, yes, that's important. And there's some cultural aspects we need to be looking at as well. And they said, well, no, we're not focusing on that. We're the talent development team. We're going to do that. And I kept saying, I would encourage you, but if that's what you want, this is your project, go for it. So they put together a great program, upskilled managers and employees, and did workshops all over the place. And after a while, we're like, well, we're not really seeing much of a difference. And the difference from also doing more research was, yes, they became more confident to do it and more competent to do it, but they weren't willing to do it because, and I'm going to step into your world, David, there wasn't the trust within the groups. There was some fear of, if I were to give someone feedback, how would it rock the boat in terms of our partnership and relationship? Would it impact my ability to get another role someplace else, to be effective in these roles and projects? So because we as a company did not look at it from the talent lens, which we did, but didn't look at the culture lens of how do we unlock the culture to allow people to then exhibit these skills and behaviors we are looking for, we were not as successful as it could be. So it's really coming from that culture perspective as well as that talent perspective as much as possible to create those dependent and interfunctional approach and strategies and executions to really unlock that potential and drive that change that we are expecting to see.
So let's simplify that, because this is really important. I love this because all the organizations, so many, we work with, they're like, how do we change our culture? How do we? I had a CEO of one of the biggest healthcare organizations in North America. We got to change our culture. We're dying. It's like, what do we do? So in our world, we do think of, I agree with so much of this. We kind of put 7 components together to say, if we don't have buy-in from the top, if we don't have, if we don't teach some common language, which is kind of that upskill part, because when we get educated, we do act differently. It's like when I learned what was inside of a hot dog, I stopped eating so many, right? So it's like when I learn something, it can change behavior, but that on its own, if we don't build trust so I guess from your perspective, maybe what you saw done well in your experience, could be Nike, could be wherever, but let's just go right to the beginning. Let's just take an organization. Let's say it's just a few thousand people. It's not Coca-Cola or Nike, but how am I going to take how could we start to change a culture that maybe isn't poisonous, but it's not high performing? What would be, if you were going to put into steps, okay, first I might do this, then I might do this, then I might do this. What would you kind of, not to, now you can see the American side coming out here, right? Well, you don't even get it yet. You're still just driving. So I'm full self-aware of what I'm pushing you toward. Yeah. So you can push back on that. But if I have some framework, even if that is, well, but then I get feedback here, or, but I do this, but I do that, is there some framing we could hang what we know we need, more time, more buy-in, and all these things on to build trust that might have, might create culture change? Any way we can get it, not over formulaic, but understanding?
Yeah, so I guess I kind of always go back with this work back to my coaching background, which is basically, where are you now? A bit of why you're there, where do you want to get to, how are you going to get there, and then get there. So I've taken that approach in working with groups, definitely in my time back at Nike with our various offices across Europe, is, hey, what was it in the culture currently? Like, what are we standing for as an organization? What are the behaviors and norms and mindsets that are helping you all to be successful in this office or within this function? What are the barriers? Let's get clear on that. What's the vision that we want to be heading towards? And what is it going to take for us to get there? What are the core things we want to focus on? Because there could be a lot of things we could do. Let's just do a couple things super well to create that shift and then move forward. And the power of the work that I saw, with my time at Nike was, we didn't just have that talk within HR or just within the leadership team. It was, we got a group of young employees to also lead this work. So they would first work with doing some of their own homework and their networking and focus groups and surveys to figure out, hey, how are employees feeling? Like, what are those behaviors and norms that they were happy about, not so happy about? Engage with leadership with the employee perspective, hear from leaders, because we all experience our culture in different ways based on where we sit at the organization, what function we sit in. So we got to hear all the perspectives. And then from that, let's work together to create that roadmap, and let's all keep ourselves accountable for leading this work. So how do we give the platform for employees to step into their own leader role, to lead some of these initiatives, drive it with leaders' support and guidance that sometimes. But that we created so much change faster when we engaged the employees and said, we want to hear from you. We expect to hear from you. And then with that, we expect you to get off your butts and be a part of this change journey and not just be sitting, waiting, and receiving the change. And when we could inspire the employees to get involved, encourage leaders to listen more to employees and partner and collaborate, and creating those bridges between the leadership levels, the bridges between the functions. We broke down the silos a lot more. Everyone was wanting to get more involved to create the change so they could see the traction that they're making. And they were celebrating those acknowledgements of what we have changed to kind of keep them going to that next step and that next step. So it's basically, be open with really where you're at. There's a lot of talk of how we want to be. Let's just get down to brass tacks. What is really happening? What are those behaviors? What can we focus on and really unlock it and engage everyone in this journey together to do that? And us in HR or whatever you call HR in your organization can enable that journey and give the toolkits and the talking points and the workshops to help instigate it. But we need, leaders to get on board themselves. We need employees do this. There's many more of them than there are of us that are sitting in HR to do this work. And we don't own culture in HR. Leaders, employees, we all own the culture ourselves.
Hey everyone, a quick interruption here to share some big news. April 12th through the 14th, you are invited to the Trusted Leaders Summit. What makes a powerful event is bringing together amazing people in a way that actually makes an impact in the world. We're talking about a get-together that is packed with immediately useful content. You'll hear from top leaders like John Foley, the former lead solo pilot for the Blue Angels, Harvard professor Alison Shapira, and more incredible global experts. Get your tickets before they're gone at trustedleadersummit.com and join us in becoming even more trusted leaders. We can't wait to see you there.
I love it. This is it. Go back to where are we? Why are we here? Where do we want to get to? Now, here's what I'm hearing people say. Because I've seen this, a massive example in actually a pretty challenging environment is what United Health Group actually created a major culture change They had thousands at the end of it, culture ambassadors. That's not done now, but that buy-in. But I guess people are saying I can just hear people listening saying, okay, great, Ty. How do I get the buy-in? How do I get the buy-in from the senior leaders? How do I get the buy-in and engagement? Even your younger team members that were a part of this initiative, they're like, I'm super busy. I'm on my own work. I'm doing all this stuff. I've got this to do. And now you're going to add that? Or, well, Ty, but that's not making better shoes. That's I got to focus on this. I got to focus on quarterly earnings. I got market share issues. So how did you you even used a word that I love with this, but it's how do you inspire buy-in from both senior leaders and those frontline folks? I think the frontline might have been easier because they see the problem. They see how it affects the bottom line and efficiency and everything. But what do you do to get that buy-in when you're going in the first time with a new initiative? Like, no, this matters.
Yeah, it's a great question. So I was very fortunate that I had a very senior leader who wanted to, in the first office that we worked as, he understood the value of inclusion. He understood the value of having diverse perspectives, and it's not based on gender and race. It was just basically function, tenure, leadership level. There were other dimensions that he knew we need to be looking at and engage in this work, and just needed some help to figure out how do we do this. So I definitely did have to influence him very much to do this. And then when it took off, there was little influencing to do because every other offices heard about it, and the VP of the region said, "Okay, you with everyone else did amazing work in the office. You need to replicate that everywhere else where I go." So that part was super easy. It was open door, come in, play with us, get this going. For the employees, it was, yes, we're adding to your plate. You are not normally in this world of change management, culture change. They were in finance, sales, operations, marketing, and so forth. So it's like, hey, it's an opportunity for you to learn something different. 2, you can step into a leadership role. 3, you get more visibility to leaders. And 4, you can practice some of these basic leadership skills that you're going to need once you get into more of that more mid-level manager, senior manager role. And hey, I'm here to coach you through that experience. I'm here to streamline your process when I know, hey, that office is doing something similar. Go connect with that group who did something similar to learn and speed track it. And also appreciating that, yes, this is not your full-time job. It is part-time, if it's adding to. So it's understanding that, yes, there is a pace of the change they can create as a group. But also say, hey, it's your journey. Your failures are your failures. Your success is your success. So if you want to fail and have that reputation, that's also on you. So that was also a little kick in the butts to say, oh yes, we need to get back on this. Let's get out there and initiate these things and drive these projects and keep hearing from employees and engage them in it as well.
What are those for again? You said for buy-in for kind of regular mid-level managers, visibility. You had 4 kind of things to get buy-in.
So I think it's visibility. It's opportunities to be in a leader role, which you maybe can't be in your functional role. I didn't say this, but I also said it also gives you more enterprise knowledge. So you see things beyond your function. You learn what's happening in other functions. You know how this business works as a whole, which you wouldn't get that visibility to had you not been part of these groups that we were creating. And also, which I didn't say, but I'll say here, also influencing. So learn how to influence senior leadership and get them to buy into what you're selling. Not, what typically happens is the other way around. Leaders are trying to sell the strategy, the programs to junior people. Just give them a chance to tell leaders and be, toe to toe at the same table. I'm not buying what you're selling. I'm going to tell you what you think is not going to work because I'm on the floor. We're the ones who are doing things. We know what's really happening. We see more of how the teams are engaging. We're going to tell you, again, from your perspective, you have your perspective, we have our perspective. It is your chance to have that open forum, to have that voice and start developing your own voice with credibility and vision and your own passion to create the change you want to create.
How'd you keep it going? Because I think, people go in with these change efforts and this is flavor of the month. That's going to stop. How did you, set the framework so that it would continue to be celebrated? I think there's some, we do some very intentional things. A big pharmaceutical company, they celebrate every year the Trust Edge, the Pillar Awards. So all these people are getting nominated, and they do this. They have these, there's an onboarding part of, Trust Edge, so that everybody gets the common language right away. It's hard to get those things going in 100,000 person organizations always, but once they're part of the framework, they're part of the culture. There's a way of it lasting. United Health Group was interesting because that chief culture officer, and then they had a big celebration every year. They had this big, thousands of people came together, and they 60 countries, and they had, because they had the culture ambassadors. That's what they became. Thousands of them were culture ambassadors. That was their extra. You could say all those mid-level folks, they got kind of indoctrinated in trust and all these other things and how to share that. But that is not, there's a lot of places that want to do that don't do it, or they stop. How do you, anything that you would say, little tips on how do you keep it going?
So some tips I learned in the journey of, coaching these. I think at one point we had 15 groups across Europe, is one myself saying to them, hey guys, teams, you're doing great work. Keep it going. Take some time to celebrate yourselves and what you've accomplished. Also setting, reminders to leaders, if I've not heard them doing this work as well, of, hey, executive team, leadership team, what are you doing to acknowledge this group that's been leading the charge? How are you acknowledging everyone in the office who also has taken some part in creating this change? And keep this part of your all hands meetings. So it's not just the numbers, the business, the brand messages. It's also, hey team, we're doing some amazing work. I see it. We all see it. Appreciate that. And then more institutionally, from an HR process perspective, at Nike, we had, they're called Coaching for Excellence documents, which is where we would put in our objectives and goals for the year. It's making sure that they get that into this document because they are doing the work. They need to be acknowledged for it, recognized it. They need to have their manager give them feedback on what they've seen on this project that they're working on. So that helped to institutionalize also some of that happening throughout the year, which was beyond my control. To say, hey, managers, you also have a responsibility to acknowledge the work that your person is doing, acknowledge that they're doing extra work than their peers maybe aren't doing. So those were all ways to kind of get this group going through sharing information and inspiration, institutionalizing the recognition throughout the year, celebrating at the end to inspire other groups to want to kind of join the round 2, round 3 of these groups. I think helped us to do it. And it all came from also a very authentic place. It wasn't a tick box activity. We used our, the Nike brand voice to really be authentic in sharing this recognition and appreciation for the work that this group did by themselves, but also every employee who took part in some shape and form to drive the change they all were wanting to create. Just help them feel like, yes, it's worth it. Because if I have a culture that's more inspiring, more innovative, more collaborative, more trusting, this is a much more fun place to work than it was, 10 days ago, 10 months ago, when we didn't have these elements that we knew were lacking, but no one wanted to step up to fill the void and create that cultural nudge that was needed to have happen.
Well, I'm going to get a little personal, but before I do, I want to ask one more question. I really appreciate this. This is the work of great companies that are working on culture. They're, the work ahead of time to listen to voices and set the framework of where you want to go and how you will keep it going consistently, and celebrate that and move forward. But you said a word that I find many people, have a hard time with, or have a hard time actually doing. They say it, but it's not so easy to do, and that is the word accountability. How did you said at one point, you said you keep each other accountable, or keep accountability. What's healthy accountability look like there? How did you keep each other accountable?
So one was being really clear of who was doing what by when, and a little bit where we could, the level we were expecting it to look like to be delivered by the time we discussed. So just getting very simple, very clear. And I guess also because, we also knew this was everyone's not full-time job. It had to be really focused and really clear of who was doing what. And when it was unclear amongst the team, it was saying, okay, we're sensing that the roles, responsibilities aren't super clear. Let's go back to who is leading what initiative, who is supporting what initiative, who else can you engage beyond this group to also be part of this. You have a plan of attack, a timeline, agree to it. Let's get involved in it, share with your leadership team so they can also help keep you accountable. You can help them maintain accountable for things that they need to deliver on. So just basically just being really clear, very specific with the what, the when, the why, and a bit of the how, and keep checking in of, hey, how are we tracking? Are we on track? Are we ahead of schedule, on schedule, behind schedule? If so, let's go into deep dive root cause of what's happening, so then figure out what needs to be done to keep getting us more on track and doing more things that we can deliver.
Well, this is the work of culture change that can make a huge, huge impact, and it's been fun to see your journey. Let's get personal for a second. What, we find great leaders tend to be leading themselves well in some way. We can get vulnerable about things we're not doing well, certainly, but I think, you have a big influence on a lot of people in your practice now, in the work you're doing around the world. What are you doing personally to lead yourself well, maybe whether it's health or physically or spiritually or socially?
So I would say when I'm at my best, which is not obviously every day, unfortunately, but when I'm at my best, it's really holding true to my purpose and why I exist. And I know when I'm in that space and I'm doing work in that space, I'm more energized, I'm more enthused in what I'm doing. I'll put more integrity and action into those things. So that's from a professional standpoint. That was from being more active in, partaking in marathons or half marathons or other events where there are relay races from Rotterdam or from Paris to Rotterdam, or the Hood to Coast back in Oregon, which is fun. You're connecting with people, you're doing things, you're being active. So those are things I try to do more often. These days, I'm maybe not as active as I used to be, which is I need to get back on that train and listen to that voice. That's more of that drill sergeant. That's like, no. Also that Nike voice, again, just do it, get the shoes on, get out and do something, versus that little sloth voice I hear ever so often. I was like, no, dude, it's fine. You've been working hard. Kick back, turn on Netflix, turn on Amazon Prime, turn on Disney Plus, just relax with the dogs and the husband on the couch. That's also fine. Or go take a nap, because that's also good for your health. It's like I've learned when I'm at my best is what voices have shown up and what voices do I need to listen to, which ones do I need to say, go take a hike, go take another lap, don't need you right now. I need this other voice, or I need my own grounded centered voice who I know what needs to happen, when it needs to happen. That's always has really served me to get things and doing things, and also just getting out of my own way.
What is that? We talked about this ahead of time. You said get something you're coming back to, and this is very, you're coaching others in this, but how do you get out of your own way?
So getting out of my own ways, like I mentioned, these voices that I hear that will say, don't do it, you shouldn't do it, it's not going to work. Whatever. Again, these are voices that have served me in at times in certain places and situations, but in certain moments, they're not serving me. So it's really, I got to sharpen my radar to when they've taken over the driver's seat, I've been kicked to the passenger seat, or even in the way back of the bus, to say, no, that can't be happening. I get back to the front, and I may need a passenger voice who is that drill sergeant who will get me going, or will give me the courage, the conviction to do things. So I need a bit of my voice and that voice to get back in that seat and keep moving forward. That is how, I'm aware of it, and I don't get seduced by these voices into a long conversation, which then means I'm not doing anything, because I'm having a nice little internal dialogue with myself and being an internal introverted thinker. Also not super helpful at times to get stuck in the rat wheel of my internal thoughts and the what ifs, and don't do.
Is there a trigger you can pull? Is there something you can? Okay, I'm stuck in that. I'm going around that. Like, what can I pull? Do I just that starts? Do you now just okay? I know when that starts happening, I'm going on the wrong direction. I have to get up and go for a run. I have to go do. Is there something specific you do to get out of that?
So I've used different techniques. So some I'm not so much of an auditory person, but sometimes I will say literally just do it, suck it up and go and move on. I'm also more of a visual person. So how do I create visual structures around my space? So little Post-it notes, little reminders of saying, okay, Ty, you said this. Let's keep yourself accountable for this. Go get the shoes on. That has helped me as well. And also being a feeling person, I can sometimes touch a part that is a reminder of, sometimes it's just this, don't listen anymore. done, or here, connect with your heart, or even I've learned this from someone, just having this feeling of, okay, slow down the voice, feel the pressure, slow down, relax, get recentered, and then make that decision of what are you going to do. That has sometimes helped in some situations where I get totally wrapped up in my head with either frustrations or whatever, and just this feeling of, okay, it's not the brain I'm listening to, it's my fingers I'm listening to. What's that feeling like? And it just slows the brain down, gets me more grounded and centered. And then from that grounded, centered place, I'm way more equipped to know what do I do now? What should I do? And just, again, quit talking about it and just get in action mode and do it.
Most training and development initiatives don't last or even solve the root problem hindering an organization. That's where TrustEdge certification comes in. TrustEdge certified partners are equipped with a suite of tools to identify, benchmark, and close gaps in trust for good. Because when you solve the real issue, you get measurable results and a culture where people actually want to make an impact. So whether you're a trainer, a manager, an HR executive, or a leader in learning and development, check out trustedgeplatform.com and see how you can start solving the root issue and get lasting results in your organization. And now back to the show.
Action does cover a multitude of sins. Momentum builds momentum. It is interesting. We can get stuck. It's like doing something, not the perfect thing, but doing something can really change everything, right? It's you find people. I was just this morning listening to a podcast about how much we've all heard this, but the more you're feeling bad about yourself, go do something kind to others, and it changes yourself so much. Or doing something. The problem with many that are depressed, perhaps, and I don't want to sound like a doctor that I'm not, but is many depression often leads to isolation, which actually amplifies depression, right? So, well, this is interesting. So is there any other thing I want to, before I leave this topic, that you're doing personally? You're a coach of many. You maybe, how are you staying fresh, relevant, and capable? Is there anything you're doing? Do you have your own coach? Are you listening? Are you listening to certain podcasts these days? Maybe not everything you're doing. I know you're a learner for sure. That's noted through everything you've done here, but maybe you're reading something specific. Is there some ways you stay kind of fresh and relevant and competent in your work and just in life?
Yeah, so I would say I read a lot. I don't really read as many books as I used to, but I'm reading articles every day. I subscribe to newsletters that give me the relevant information of new trends or new research and so forth.
Do you have a favorite? Jumping in, do you have a favorite? Just any article?
For articles like Fast Company, I love what they put out there, and they have a lot of diverse perspectives and topics that they approach and come from different places to talk about similar topics, which I really appreciate. Business Insider is one I get for more of the business kind of topics. And then other, companies like yourself put out newsletters that, keeps me informed of what you all are up to learn and grow. It's finding my, peers of not just, talking, we do talk shop, obviously, but also getting to know from them. Okay, what are you doing? What are you learning? What's working for you? I also learn more through people, which really helps me to do that. So I like to read, but more like to learn through others. And also my biggest learning path is to do in action. So how do I learn about myself and learn what works, what didn't work, how to improve things moving forward. That's how I best learn.
I love it. What's your, you went from kind of in many ways a big company guy to if I can say that, that's a little, big company person to a kind of a, now running your own award-winning coaching business, and you're an executive coach. You do leadership development out of it. How do you, how do you gain business these days? Like, how do you get work? I mean, this is an entrepreneurial question, but you became this entrepreneur, and you're doing what you're passionate about. Just many people think, well, how do you do that? How do you just make that jump? How do you make that leap? And how do you actually get business?
Yeah, so I think to make that leap, you have to have the faith and trust in yourself that you can make it work. And I've changed industries, I've changed functions, I've gone in-house, out, having my own. And every time it's like, okay, I don't know this world, but I'm going to step into it. And if I don't like it, I can always come back. and then created my own company. This time it's relying on the connections I had from previous colleagues that either were still in companies I worked with or have moved on someplace else. It's like what everyone else is doing in my shoes. Of you're on LinkedIn, you're making connections that way. You're going to events to meet people, to then have a more kind of mindful and thoughtful conversation around what are they up to, what are their needs, what lanes do I play in, and how can I best serve them, and how can we collaborate. That's generally is how it's been.
What's your favorite thing to do? You do everything from culture and leadership development to executive coaching and even other coaching. What's your favorite?
I need to create impact with others. And obviously, your one-on-one coaching, you see it more because you're on this journey with that one person, or even a team a little bit better because there's more people you're engaging with to see them on that journey. But then that's just a small group you can influence. So that's the good part about it. The not so good part about it in designing programs and workshops and trainings, and then facilitating those things. You can impact more people. You're with more people. The downside is kind of a one and done. Sometimes you don't know after that, did anything change? So I'm not really answering your question, David. I guess I know me. I need to have also these different things. I have to have different topics, variety, to keep myself fresh, to keep myself learning and growing. But I would say if you had to put a gun to my head, you can only do one thing. I guess it would be the group coaching, team coaching.
Yep, collaborative coaching. So one thing left for Ty. What are you looking forward to? What do you hope for? You look down the road. I don't know, it's 10 years, or what's something you're hoping for down the road, or maybe it's bucket list, but maybe it's just a kind of hope for the future that you're a part of.
So I would want this for definitely for myself, but for the people in my system, my network, my constellation, and then way beyond that, is just that we're in a place that we're more mindful of each other, more caring of each other, more trusting of each other, to really create more of these bridges of understanding and get out of this us versus them dynamics, which is just not helping anything. So if I'm in a space to have maybe a bigger platform, I guess, to bring this message out and bring people in to help support them on their journeys to be more impactful in their roles, to create their own bridges and connections, I think that would be a fantastic place. And I love being in different cultures. So getting back on the plane would be amazing to, be more physically with people and improve my understanding of different cultures and backgrounds. Finding ways to create these deeper and stronger bridges would be amazing. Being semi-retired, put it that way, would also be super cool as well, to have more time to really do pet projects and explore different places and be around the world a lot more and not be tied down to a job necessarily would be great. But
let's jump into one of those.
Serving others.
Oh, I love it. Let's jump into one of those before we roll. I know we kind of gone a little longer here, but I want to ask, I think you are about this human change for the positive. There's no time we've needed this ability to build bridges. I mean, we're incentivized against it. Social media is incentivized against it. We're incentivized toward polarization. Here in the U.S., much of our government over the last 30 years is incentivized against working together. We have these hopes. The young folks have hopes of building bridges again. And in the next episode, we need to talk about how do we actually do it, because I'm passionate about that. My side is thinking about the biggest problems. I want to be about how do we use trust to solve some of these biggest problems? And those are governmental, those are business, those are social political. And boy, I'd love to get into that more. But just one of your projects on the way was some of this work in Africa that you did with Water's Fine in the prisons in Cape Town. Just tell us just a quick glimpse of that and something you learned.
Yeah, so I was part of a leadership program at the time, and we were all tasked to create a project between times of coming together and report back on what we did, what we learned about it, and how our leadership helped create this. And I just moved from the US to Amsterdam, didn't know anyone here. I'm like, what am I going to do? There's no project I can start. All the, again, that voice of like, you can't do this, it's impossible, it's too hard, yada, yada, yada. And then realize, okay, get out of it, finding a network you do have and start making connections and so forth. So I did find a group here in Amsterdam called Young in Prison, and they're a fantastic group that does work in youth prisons in countries that are developing. So obviously we have less resources to give to these kids who are in unfortunate situations. So I said, great, where are you? How can I partner with you? And here's what I do as a coach. Is there an intersection between our worlds? And they're like, well, yeah, let's try this. Let's prototype something. So I had found a coach in South Africa that was in the same training program that I was in. And they had a youth prison that Young in Prison was supporting with initiatives around activities and educational projects. So I worked with this coach saying, okay, what can we do together to support these kids? And what's the best way to do that? So we had designed a program prototyping with 6 boys who were about to be released from prison. And we said, we need to get them on a journey that's going to put them on a different path so they don't get released and do the similar behaviors and fall into the similar traps that got them into prison in the first place. So working with her, she worked with these young boys to figure out, okay, you're still here. What is your plan once you get out? And they were probably 10 to 12 years old kids. So while we were with them for 3 months before they were released, and then once they were released, she met with them for another 3 months to say, okay, how are things going? What's next for you? What do you need to shift and change to get you to have the life you want to be having? So it was just a way to help them transition back into being back with their families, being back with maybe friends who maybe helped them get to where they were originally. So for me, it was important to do something for kids because I came from a very fortunate background. Sorry. So I have a responsibility to help create this change for others. Mm-hmm. This was a small thing that I could initiate. I had someone else who partnered, both from the organization and this coach, to really help these young boys, hopefully get them to have the life they deserve to have, which is, very important for me. So that's what I need to step into more and more of helping others who are less fortunate to help them have a life that I was fortunate to be brought up within, with the town I was brought up within, the parents that I had, the family network I had, and support system. There are way more people that have more need, and we need to also get over ourselves of our horrible lives that we think we have to do something for someone else and take the time and be intentional around it to make it happen.
Love it. Have you stayed in touch, or have you heard any stories of what's happened with those 6?
So this was a while ago. So I had not. That's one of my failings of not to have stayed in contact. I couldn't be in touch with the boys because of certain reasons, but with the coach, with her, it has been once in a while, but she also has moved on and so forth. But I need to get back into that organization saying, okay, I'm here again. I'm back in Amsterdam. What do you got going on? How can I best support you and help you do the great work you're doing with these kids around the globe?
Thanks for sharing. That's the work of this work. And we don't always see the change. And I can tell stories of people that didn't see the change that they made in me. They probably have no idea the impact of something that's impacted the way I raise my kids, or my marriage, or my friendships, or my leadership, that they were a part of, and they're gone now, or they maybe are somewhere. That first grade teacher that I have no idea where she is, right? So we have a chance. But sometimes do we have a chance to actually know, but we still are called to do the work and be a part of this. Well, Ty, if I see something in you, you need to do more of that. Do more of that work. And
totally true.
That's something you ought to be about. So, Ty, where can our listeners find out more about what the great work you're doing at Remix?
Yeah, so my website is remix.coach. You can find me on LinkedIn from my name. Twitter, I'm not on there as much, but my Twitter handle is just my name, Ty Jernstedt. So would love to hear from others if something here inspired you or you have something to collaborate with. Would love to support you on the journeys you are in within your organizations or communities that you're serving. I'm always looking for new ways to partner and create some impact and amplify the impact that others can have in their worlds.
And we're hoping to see Ty, trying to compel him to jump the pond for the April 12, 13, and 14
that'd be great.
Trusted Leader Summit.
It'd be good to get back to the Midwest and see you all again.
Yeah, that'd be great.
All right. In the work that you guys are doing.
Well, before we finish, so remix.coach is where you
That's
can
correct.
find more. And Ty Jernstedt, and let's leave you with the final question. It's a Trusted Leader show. We ask everybody, who's a leader you trust and why?
So it was a leader that I had, again, keep talking about Nike, but it was an amazing time of my life. She was an amazing leader. She was very inclusive, very embracing, very empowering, trusted us to get on and do the work that how we felt needed to be done and not have to be dictated by her. She was all these things that were super important, led with compassion, was bringing her passion to the team and to the work. And with that, we wanted to make sure also that we were also making sure she was looking as good as she could look as she was reporting to our CEO and president of the company. But she's amazing. Is always a great, since we both left, a great mentor to always go back to get that little jolt of inspiration from her of how she just shows up in the world. It's just been a great person to have been able to work for and to partner with since over these years.
Well, thank you. These leaders, they may, often those mentors, leaders, examples make a bigger difference than they know, and we have the chance to try to pass that on to others. So
it's our obligation, I think.
It is. Ty, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for being a friend and just touching our community so wonderfully. That's it. That's been the Trusted Leaders Show. Until next time, stay trusted.